Hello, my name is Dr. Sean McCorkle at Summer Creek Animal Clinic in Fort Worth, Texas. And today we thought we would answer some frequently asked questions that we get related to fleas and ticks in dogs. So Lauren is going to ask me some questions and I'll do my best to answer them for you guys.
Dr. McCorkle, what diseases are associated with fleas and ticks?
Yeah, so people tend to think about ticks transmitting diseases, which is certainly the case, but fleas actually transmit diseases as well. The most common thing we see in animals relating to diseases transmitted by fleas is tapeworms. Those are the little tiny intestinal parasites that look like little grains of rice. Those actually are transmitted by a flea. Your pet cannot get tapeworms without ingesting the flea. And so the flea gets on the pet, bites them, the dog and cat are itchy, they turn around, eat the flea, and then that's how the tapeworm completes its life cycle. I think the thing that people are most aware of in people is cat scratch fever, and that is related to that's a flea transmitted disease as well. So those are just a few things. There's other things that fleas transmit, but those are two common examples. Ticks, on the other hand, are very well known for transmitting a lot of diseases. The most common one in people is Lyme disease, or at least the most well known. Where we are in Fort Worth, it is an endemic issue now, but it's still a very, very minimal problem in this area of the country. But in places like the Northeast, it's a really, really big issue, and people are transmitted. People get Lyme disease commonly, and dogs particularly can be a source of infection. And the ticks can bite the dogs and then transmit the disease to people as well. And so Lyme disease is the biggest one, but there's other diseases like Ehrlichia, anaplasmosis that we see a little bit more down here, Rocky Mountain spotted fever. There's a number of them.
If my dog is diagnosed with fleas and ticks, what is the treatment to get rid of them?
Yes, so if your dog has fleas and ticks, the most important thing is to have a recommendation from your veterinarian on what specific product would be good for them. Most commonly nowadays, the oral flea and tick preventions are what are used that are prescription level products. The reason is because they are super effective at killing fleas and ticks and preventing them. There is a lot of information online that talks about how dangerous they are. That is not the case, generally speaking. They have to be FDA approved in order to be able to be prescribed and used, which means they have to go through rigorous testing. There are, with any products like that, there are risks involved. That's why making decisions on which product to use on a given specific pet is so important. And that needs to be a decision that you and your veterinarian make together. We typically use the oral flea and tick products in dogs. We do thousands of doses a year, and rarely, if ever, have seen any problems with them. And so you get a really low risk of problems with them and an extremely high effectiveness. So that's what we recommend for flea and tick products in dogs, unless there is a underlying issue that would put us away from that. And fortunately, we have other good options that we can look at as well.
Perfect. What is the flea life cycle, and why is it important to know this for treatment?
Yeah, the flea life cycle, the reason why that's so important is because knowing where the products work within the life cycle. So does it kill the adult? Does it kill the eggs, the larva, the pupa? Where does it work within the life cycle? So there are actually, I can think of one product particularly that all it does is has an insect growth regulator. And so what that means is it's going to prevent the eggs from hatching, which is great. But it's not going to do anything for the rest of the life cycle, even the adults. It does not kill the adult flea. And so generally speaking, when we are talking about flea and the flea infestation or treating fleas and preventing fleas, we want to make sure we've got something that kills the adults and that kills the adults quickly, because that's how you're going to make sure that they're not able to feed and continue to reproduce. And even if you don't have any fleas in your environment and you have them on just an insect growth regulator, it's very, especially in our area in Fort Worth, it's very common for adult fleas to make their way into the environment through the humans. They hitch a ride on their pant leg, wildlife that comes into the yard. And so you really need something that's going to kill those adult fleas before they can reproduce. That's why that's important.
Are flea and tick treatments painful at all?
Generally speaking, no. If you've got a really severe tick infestation and you're manually trying to peel those ticks off, I mean, I guess that could get uncomfortable. But generally speaking, no. Especially nowadays, you know, flea and tick baths used to be, and dips used to be a big thing 10, 20 years ago, even not that long ago. Those have really fallen out of favor because the products for killing and preventing fleas and ticks have gotten so good that in our hospital, if we have a severe flea or tick infestation, we typically don't even recommend doing any sort of dipping. We just get them started on a prevention that's quickly going to start killing them as quickly as possible. And that's going to generally be the mainstay of both treatment and prevention.
What are the risks of treatment?
Yeah, so we hit on that a little bit. It really depends on the product you're using. For example, we can start with like the topical products or the flea and tick collars, particularly the really cheap ones. You can have a lot of intense reaction to the skin. In some of the topical products, for example, you can have the same thing. And even with the better products, that's always a risk because every patient is different. And they're going to react differently, and there's still always going to be some inherent risk of skin irritation or a skin reaction. The general thing that most people are aware of, or that ends up being a big concern, is neurologic side effects, because these products, that's how they kill the fleas and ticks for the most part. And so the concern is always, is it going to cause neurologic side effects to my pet? And again, we tend to see more of that, at least subjectively from my experience, on a lot of those cheaper over-the-counter products. But even with the best of the best products, you're still going to have some inherent risk involved with that. So I would say the biggest concern is going to be neurologic side effects. So as an example, we had talked about having the discussion with your veterinarian and making a decision on a product that's best for your pet, based on their history, their breed, their physical exam findings. One of the things that might lead me to make a different decision on a flea tick product than I would typically make is if your pet has a history of seizures. That could increase their risk of certain side effects with some of these products. Now, with that said, I have seen dogs on these products that have a history of seizures, and for whatever reason have stayed on the product and have seen zero correlation with that. So that it doesn't mean that it's going to cause your dog to have seizures, but those are the kind of like clinical decision-making things you have to make those decisions along the way.
Got it. Are there natural or over-the-counter treatments for fleas and ticks?
Yeah, that comes up a lot nowadays. There are remedies that you can find that supposedly have some effect on killing fleas. I don't know of anything that purports having a really long duration of action that prevents them. It may be out there, but the problem with those things is not that they're for sure ineffective. There's just not any good research to support using essential oils, for example, as a flea prevention. And there is potential risks with that can be an issue if your pet ingests too much of that. And so the short answer is not anything that I would recommend that is either going to be effective or has been studied to be safe. And that's an important thing to remember when we're looking at products, particularly the FDA regulated products. We can be to a certain degree confident that those products have been tested, and we have relative confidence that they're going to be both safe and effective. And even the over-the-counter products, at least they're tested for safety concerns.
Thanks, Dr. McCorkle. How do I get rid of fleas and ticks in our home?
Yeah, that's a really great question. That comes up a lot, especially when I diagnose fleas or ticks on a pet. The concern is, do I have them in the environment? Especially if there are other pets in the environment that are unprotected, the answer is almost always going to be yes. So the most important thing when you have a pet with fleas and or ticks is not the environmental treatment. It is making sure that all of the pets in the environment are on really good flea and tick prevention month in and month out, year round. If you're in my kind of climate in Fort Worth, Texas, if you're in a different climate, then that discussion would have to be made with your veterinarian on, does it need to be year round or not? Most places are going to be year round. And so that is step one, all of the pets needing to be on good flea and tick prevention. That will ensure that the food source for those fleas and ticks are being addressed, because they're going to die. They're not going to have that ability to feed. Instead of that, they're going to die. So they can't reproduce. Now, that doesn't mean that environmental treatment isn't helpful. I still do encourage, particularly with fleas, because they can really set up shop in the environment very quickly and to a large degree. So I do recommend, in addition to the flea and tick prevention, to focus on environmental decontamination. So that doesn't necessarily have to be using a lot of pesticides. I generally encourage clients to just do a really thorough cleaning. So vacuuming any area that is kind of shaded, like carpet under the couch, couch cushions, the dog bedding, cat bedding, if any of that can be washed, wash it. Doing deep kind of cleaning like that, vacuuming multiple times a week to try to get all the eggs and stuff out of the carpet, rugs, bedding. That can help speed the process along, but only in conjunction with having them on really good prevention. That's gonna be the most successful thing. And then I do want to say one other thing. People often talk about, I don't need prevention because I have a pest control company that comes out monthly or quarterly or whatever it is. That, in my experience, is completely inadequate at ensuring that you're not going to have a flea problem, especially with our climate. That's not going to have adequate coverage for that entire time to ensure that no fleas are able to set up shop. You're number one, you're not going to be able to treat every nook and cranny of the house or of the yard. So I'm not a big fan of that kind of treatment for fleas and ticks. It's not wrong to do that. It's just not going to be adequate, and it gives you a false sense of security with your pets. So if you have them on really good flea and tick prevention, if you want to do pest control services, great. I'm not sure it's necessary to do the flea and tick component if they're on good flea and tick prevention. So I hope that's helpful. If you have any other questions, make sure you reach out. We'd love to chat with you at Summer Creek Animal Clinic. Our phone number is 817-523-1139. And we have a lot more information on our website at summercreekvet.com. Thank you so much.